Hey everyone, and welcome to this Lunch and Learn for Lassard. I am Brittany Clark, and I will be your facilitator today. Today's Lunch and Learn will be on IEP components. So we are part of Lassard, and Lassard is a part of the Human Development Center for LSU Health Science in New Orleans. We focus on early childhood education all the way through 12th grade, as well as post-secondary transitions. This is our Lassard team. We have a diverse expertise and decades of combined experience. We bring collective knowledge together to collaborate, problem solve, and produce capacity in Louisiana school districts. Our team is made up of special educators, a BCBA, occupational therapists, school psychologists, educational therapists, school administrators, speech language pathologists, and early interventionists, as well as a licensed professional counselor. So in today's Lunch and Learn, we will learn what an IEP is and how it is used. We will explore components of an IEP to determine what is needed in each section. So what is an IEP? Well, an IEP is an individualized education plan, and they are legally binding, data-driven contracts that provide current and historical information regarding individual student strengths and support needs, as well as outline the specific services required to meet those needs. IEP should be done on a yearly basis. However, parents and teachers can also call an IEP meeting whenever they need to. So when we think of an IEP, we think of the people, the team that make the IEP and make the decisions that best meets the need of the student. What we need to understand is that students should also be included in this decision making, and they should also be included in their IEPs as well. We're going to talk about some of the team members today that should be included in your IEP. The state of Louisiana does say that the core four should be there, and that is the special education teacher is one of them. The next one is the parent. Nobody knows the student as well as this parent does. So it's vital that we include our parents in all of our decision makings for our students. The next member of the core four is your administrator or your ODR. Your administrator is important to include in conversations because they can discuss the type of supports at the school and what is needed to make sure that the student is successful. The last member of the core four is the general education teacher. Our general education teacher are the ones who are the experts when it comes to our general student curriculum and our state standards. It's important to include this team member in our IEP decisions so that our student has the best supports needed to be able to succeed in the regular classroom. Outside of the core four and the students, we also want to talk about some other people who are crucial to the team. Paraprofessionals. Paraprofessionals see a different side of the student than most people see. They also see different parts of the day that some people might not understand. They might learn the triggers. They might learn what the students like and what they do not like. And then lastly, we always want to talk to our related service providers. Our related service providers are people that are extremely important and can give different techniques and supports for day-to-day needs of the student to be able to support themselves in the classroom. Different related service providers include the occupational therapist, the speech therapist, the adapted PE teacher, and the physical therapist. Together, everyone on this team should be focused on the student and what the student needs to be able to determine what is needed in that IEP. So why do we need a team? What is the point of that? Well, we need a team to be able to collaborate, and there's different benefits of collaboration. So some of the benefits include they build trust, it encourages full participation by everybody, it incorporates different point of views, it validates everyone's opinion, minimizes the stress of disagreements, resolves parent-school conflicts, and builds a foundation for effective collaboration in the future. But for an IEP, for the purposes, we want to make sure that we have student-centered collaboration and include those students in all of our decision making. And this helps students to set and meet their goals. It also provides the necessary support for a student's success in an inclusive setting. So now we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about parental and student rights. So this is a very brief overview of some of the parental and student rights. So some of the rights are the right to participate in the IEP process. As stated before, the core four includes that parent. So they are legally a part of the IEP team. But the student also has a right to be included in any decision making for their education. The right to invite others to an IEP meeting. Parents have the right to invite others to IEP meetings. This may include advocates, it could include other family members, or outside therapists. It's best to include whoever is needed for the IEP to be on the same page to make sure that everybody knows what the student needs in order to be successful. You also have a right to view documents at any time, and this includes evaluations, IEPs, progress reports, anything that you may need. Louisiana also has passed a law recently stating that a parent can ask to see the draft version of an evaluation or an IEP, and it should be given within 3 days of the IEP meeting at least. So some more rights of the parent and student include prior written notice. This must be given to you when the district proposes or refuses to initiate a change or something related to the provision of FAPE, which is free and appropriate public education. The prior written notice should be given at the end of an IEP. The district also has a couple days in order to answer any questions or propose or refuse anything that they may need to, and they can send it home as long as it is sent to the parent. The right to call an IEP team meeting. As I stated earlier, a parent has the right to call an IEP team meeting at any time, and so does a teacher. If you have any types of concerns or anything like that, it is best to call an IEP meeting to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then if your student is being evaluated and you disagree with an evaluation, you also have the right to an independent education evaluation. This is actually done at the public school's expense, and it's for another evaluation to be completed. So along with some other rights, you have the right to manifestation determination. This is a meeting to determine whether or not the student's disability had an indirect or direct relationship to a behavior that would cause for a change of placement due to the violation of code of conduct. You also have a right to consent before any changes are made to the IEP. When you are consenting to changes, if there's ever a time where you're in disagreement, you have the right to mediation or dispute resolution, as it is called. And during this time, there's also what we call a stay put order. And what that means is if you in the school district or if the school district and the parent are not in agreement, the student services stay put instead of changing until an agreement can be made. And lastly, you have a right to confidentiality. It is up to the teachers, to the administrators, and to everyone who is a part of the student's team to keep what is said during an IEP confidential. So now that we have talked about some of the rights, we're going to talk about different components of an IEP. Many times you will see an IEP and it will be pages long. So we're going to talk about what each of these components are and a little snapshot of what should be included. So if you ever have to go to an IEP or if you're holding an IEP, you know exactly what should be in the boxes. So the first component we're going to talk about is the general student information. The general student information is an overview of what that student is. So the first box is going to be your general information. In this box, you're going to include characteristics of the students, likes, dislikes, information that helps get to know the student. The one thing you want to make sure for this box is that you're actually describing the student and you're going into detail rather than doing a very vague sentence, such as the student is a kindergartner. We want whoever is going to pick up this IEP next to actually know a little bit about our student before they can start working with them. The second box is strengths. This is not limited to academic strengths. Here is where you can talk about behavior, you can talk about communication, social, self-help. It's very important to list all the strengths. As a parent of a son with an IEP, it's hard going into IEP meetings when you only hear the negative things. So right here, we really want to shine on our students about what their strengths are. Parental concerns. So in this box, any concern that the parent or the student may have regarding their student's education or school experience should be included. Parents have the right to say whatever concern that they do have, and any concerns that are here should be addressed throughout the IEP. And if it's not on the IEP, it should be addressed in that prior written notice that we had discussed. So the next box is their evaluation and reevaluation results. This is going to be a very specific box with specific data that is given from the evaluation itself. It should give scores and the most recent evaluation and reevaluation results. In this box, you will also see all the diagnoses that would be described in detail. Academic, developmental, and functional needs. This is a box where we are talking about what the student needs, in order to be successful. For this box, the needs should correlate with the goals that you will see in the upcoming components. And then progress or lack of progress in the general education curriculum. This is a description of the student's progress and how their exceptionality impacts progress in the general education curriculum. So if you have a student who only goes to lunch or only goes to PE or library or something like that, we still want to know how their progress is in that curriculum. Their disability and how it affects how long they're in there is also very important in this process and in this box. So the next component that we're going to talk about is the special factors. The first box on special factors is behavior. If there are any concerns about a student's behavior, this is where we want to describe them. This is where if a student has a behavior plan, it will be listed. I challenge all of the teachers on the Lunch and Learn that if you do have a student with a behavior plan, to make sure you put into great detail what that behavior plan entails in this box. Again, if someone else has to have your classroom for the next couple of days, this will allow them to know exactly what they need to do. So for English learner, this is for our students who do not have English as a first language, and we want to describe any needs and supports the student may have while they are learning English. And communication needs of a student. We want you to collaborate with your speech therapist for this box, because in this box, you're going to have a description of communication needs of the student, as well as current strategies and tools in place to support that communication. This is a great box to put if that student has communication devices or things that they may need in order to strengthen that communication. Instruction in and the use of Braille. This describes the student's progress in learning Braille and any techniques and supports that are needed. Assistive technology describes any assistive technology that the student is currently using or assistive technology that is being trialed and tested with the student. I also want to point out that for assistive technology, if the student receives assistive technology, it should be marked here in this box, but it should also be shown on the accommodations that it is being used for that student. And health needs. Anytime a student has a health need or an individual health plan, we want to communicate with the nurse to make sure that this box has anything that a teacher may need if there's a crisis or a health emergency, that they might have a plan to address what is needed. The next component that we are going to talk about is the instructional plan. You will see on an IEP that there are a lot of different goals. The different types of goals that you may have are academic, behavior, communication, motor, self-help, social and or emotional, and other. The goals should match the needs that were on the first page in the needs box. So as a former special education teacher, I think present levels are probably one of the most important parts of an IEP. And the reason I think that is because it's where the students are now. It's how they are functioning with what they have right now that is either working or not working for them. So you're going to see a description of their current strengths, their support needs, and their learning styles. We need to remember that present levels should be brief but meaningful, and they should identify a student's needs. This information should reflect the last performance of a student since the last IEP was written, and the information should always be data driven. So once you have the current data in the present level performance, then you can plan your goal. So you know where the student is, and now you can plan for where they're going. So when you're writing a goal, it's important that they are SMART goals. So they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. The goals should always be standards based or connectors based if you teach students using Louisiana State connectors. You should align the needs addressed in the present level of performance. You should work to close the functioning gap, and you should address all the students' needs: academic, behavior, self-help, communication, social, and motor. So this is an example of a present level performance and how a goal matches that present level performance. So as you can see in the present level performance, it talks about the grade level the student is currently reading on and the amount of accuracy she has with answering questions. Her needs for right now says that she struggles to identify main and supporting characters within a text, as well as give descriptive evidence of characters. It then goes on to say that she went from a below reading level to a 290 Lexile in about approximately 3 months. It also discusses the data from her previous IEP, stating that she has met her goal. Looking at the needs of the present level performance, and then looking at the goal, you can see that they're addressing the need directly of describing characters in a story. So the goal now says by the end of the IEP year, the student will be able to describe characters in a story, such as their traits, motivations, or feelings, using strategies such as writing frames and graphic organizers as evidenced by work samples with at least 70% accuracy across 3 out of 4 trials. Now, this goal is going to last an entire calendar year. So if you feel that the goal might be hard to achieve or might have a lot going on in it, you can also make objectives that I like to consider stepping stones to get to your goal. So the next component that we're going to discuss are accommodations and modifications. The first thing we need to learn is what the difference is between the two of them. If we are changing what a student is learning, that is a modification. However, if we are changing how a student learns, that is what we call an accommodation. When you see an IEP, you see that there are a long list of different accommodations. Accommodations are put in 4 different categories. So the first category is a presentation accommodation, and this is exactly what it says. It is how material is presented to that student. The response accommodation is how a student responds and how a student demonstrates their learning. This could include answers recorded if they have assistive technology with a communication device. Those types of things could be in the response accommodations. Also, we have timing and scheduling. This is going to give your students, if they have extended time or breaks, this is where you're going to find those accommodations. And then lastly, setting. We know that some students have small group testing, but they also have small group instruction, or maybe they just have a specified seat where they need to sit. So in the setting accommodations is where we have those listed as well. A lot of times you can see in the different categories of accommodations that there's 2 that look similar. So in the example given, there's a presentation accommodation saying that a student may receive a study guide, but then there's a response accommodation saying the student receives a study guide and can use it to respond during classroom testing. These are not redundant. One is just given to the student, and one is showing how the student demonstrates their knowledge. So it's important whenever you are selecting accommodations, one, it's a team effort and all decisions on an IEP should be based on a team decision. But two, we need to remember that it is not a menu that you just choose from, and we are choosing accommodations that best benefit the student and it matches the student's needs. So we want to look at the general student information along with their strengths, their needs, their special factors, bring that into the instructional plan to looking at accommodations of how you're going to get that student to the to the current curriculum rather than changing the curriculum, and then we choose that accommodation. The last component that we are going to discuss are program services and the placement and least restrictive environment. On this part of the IEP, you will learn whether or not your student does regular assessments or the Lead Connect. We're going to talk about how many classes and activities they're in with their regular setting and their non-disabled peers, special transportation, extra needs for support staff, extended school year services, and if they qualify, special education minutes, and then the placement for the LRE continuum. When you hear the letters LRE, that is the least restrictive environment. Our goal is for students to be on that least restrictive environment, in that least restrictive environment, completing their learning. And the continuum goes from the least restrictive, which is inside the regular class more than 80% of the day, all the way to the most restrictive, which is a hospital homebound or a facility. Anything that is discussed in an IEP should be written on that IEP once it's agreed upon. The reason we say this is because there are a lot of times in IEPs that you will hear, well, Miss Brittany gives the visuals to everybody, so it's just a natural thing in that classroom. However, if Miss Brittany is ever not there or Miss Brittany has to, the teachers get switched around and it's not documented on that IEP, the next person will not know how to do it, or the next person will not know that it is mandated. So just make sure that anything that is discussed and agreed upon is something that is included and written in that IEP. This is a great resource that I used to actually use in my own classroom. It is great for parents and students. It is called an IEP at a glance. IEPs, some very involved IEPs I have seen get up to 32 pages, and it is just a lot of reading and a lot of things to carry around. However, if you have this as IEP at a glance, it kind of gives a general snapshot of what it is in the different components of an IEP. So it talks about if they have a behavior plan or a health plan. Knowing that IEP due date is very important for compliance purposes because you always have to have it before their due date is up. We actually shared this on our social media platform this past week for you to download it on our website. If you have any questions or concerns,